Welcome to this episode of Life Science Success. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Don, and I'm a digital marketer in life sciences. And so, with that, let me just bring up my guest here today. My guest is Troy Fugate. He's the CCO of Compliance Insight. Troy brings 30 plus years of FDA readiness, GMP, and quality leadership, turning complex requirements into practical culture shaping solutions and championing the align, apply, adapt framework across pharma, cell gene therapy, and medical devices. So with that, welcome to the podcast, Troy. It's great to have you here.
Oh, thank you for the invite. Very much appreciate being able to speak.
Yeah, it's great. And would you mind just telling everybody a little bit about, so what is your career history and what is it that led you specifically to focus in on FDA and then also life sciences?
Well, I tell you, I came out of college and went into the government, looking at various aspects of going into government roles. And I had an opportunity long ago to go into a pharmaceutical company. And what I found, which was very intriguing to me at the time, was my ability to really apply my concept of looking at large volumes of regulations, lots of writings, lots of rules, and being able to boil that down to the why, the intent behind it, and then being able to apply that to the industry and saying, everyone has a little bit different approach to things, a little bit different context, cultures, products, processes. So I was able to really fit that application of simplicity into how to be compliant to the workforce in the industry.
Well, thank you for sharing that. So, with all of your experience in, you know, life sciences as well as compliance, what is it that, and how has your career evolved from your early days from becoming vice president of field operations at Compliance Insight?
Well, I tell you, it's evolved, and it's really, if you take Covey's 7 habits of effective people, like honing the saw, sharpening that saw, that's really what's gone on with this. Uh, I now see, looking back at my career, I had the thoughts, the ideas, but they weren't clear, not even to me. It was there. I could understand that there was a piece of the puzzle that was missing. What was intriguing to me was working either in industry or as my role as now a service provider, that you'd go in and you'd help people resolve their compliance issues only to be called back because they had continued compliance issues. I knew a piece was missing. I couldn't figure it out, and I kept working on it. And so I actually had mentors myself, and we sat down for long periods of time debating this and looking at it. And it really came down to making it simple, making it clear. And so, as you said to start with, the A3 concept, the align, apply, and adapt. That's really how that evolved, and that came out of some very bad situations in industry, and and so it became a very simple process for people to follow, and it worked, and we just kept honing that saw. You kept sharpening it.
I feel like there are also a lot of different compliance, focused companies in our space. So, how is it that Compliance Insight differentiates itself from the regulatory consulting field?
Well, it's various aspects to that. One is to be very much hands-on, and really, we took this many years ago. My partner and I started the company, and because we looked at those service providers out there, those compliance, regulatory, quality service providers, and we said that there's something missing. It was just that inability to convey something that should have been easily done to the company and have them pick it up and go on their own. It's sort of like a parent and a child. You want your child to eventually be able to do their own thing. So you help them along, you guide them, you coach them. So we went into this with a vision up front to be a partner and to be that most trusted partner in really advancing GMP excellence. And so those words were selected very much with intent to be the partner, to understand what your goals are, and to be able to implement those goals as long as they didn't violate the code, but you were able to take those things and then implement them in the context of compliance. We really looked at compliance from all the people that said compliance was really a drag, an anchor, a cost center, and said, no, if you really think of compliance the right way, compliance can be a good business model. The GMPs, you could actually say, are good business practices. And the FDA saw that many years ago, and we saw it as well. So we implemented something what we called is going beyond those regulations to compliance that makes sense. That was really our differentiator, and it was to be there with specific codes of conduct, of commitment, and of ethics. And we live by those things. I can say we hire and we do fire people that violate those, and so we are very much aware that in industry, really the only thing that we have that is unique to us is our reputation,
Mm.
and to lose that means you lose the trust, and that was our vision, to have that trust as the foundation.
Ultimately important for sure. So your align, apply, adapt model has been highlighted as a successful framework. Can you explain how this model works and why it resonates so well across different regions and different types of companies?
It's a great question. I tell you, the easiest way for me to put this into context is to really tell you the story, how that came about. And if you can see this, you can close your eyes and you can think about this. Here it is. I'm in another conference room. I'm in another company that has had another FDA inspection, and it was going very badly. They had called me in. I had walked into this looking at it saying I wasn't sure what I was going to walk into, but it was what I expected. It was chaos. And I sat there and I was watching people, the leadership of this company, just going crazy. If you can, again, close your eyes and see people running down the hallways with their hair on fire, that was truly what was going on. And ultimately, in the midst of all of this chaos, I am sitting here listening to it, and I said, can we just stop for a moment? And they looked at me like I had a third eye that was all of a sudden appearing in my head. And I said, look, we should just stop for a moment and step back from this. And there were people there that said, but we have to do something. We have to do anything. And I said, I agree. And there were people that said, we just have to be compliant. And I said, I agree. But the context of this, and this is where my first rule came down, was understand this. The first rule of compliance is not action. The first rule of compliance is clarity. And I said, so everybody's saying we must do something. What is that? And what is be compliant? What does that mean? So when we broke it all down and we had the various leaders look at it, they were not aligned on what had to be done and what was even compliant. There were basic definitions that were missing. So it really transformed that into, okay, let's align. And ultimately, I got up, and I'm known as the professor. I stand up on the whiteboard. I went to one side of the whiteboard and I drew a circle and I said, "We are here." I went to the other side of the whiteboard and I wrote, "This is where we want to go." And I said, "Define where we want to go. What does that look like? What's success look like?" And that took some time. And then I went back over and I said, "Okay, where are we now? Do you really know? Do you really understand that in context with where we want to go?" And come to find out, they didn't. So that took more time, but it was time so well invested that they understood the clarity of it. And it was where we are now, very clear. Where we want to go, very clear. That's now I'm starting to develop the alignment. I drew a line between those two circles and I said, now we can start mapping out how to get from here where we are to where we want to go. And that was the apply concept. And then out of that, I said, look, best laid plans, mice and men, right? I think Eisenhower said it the best, that the planning of the D-Day invasion was critical. It fell apart immediately upon encountering the enemy, but the planning was critical. And that is the alignment aspect to it. And that's where you get to that last part, which is the adapt. We have to be able to maneuver, be flexible, and be able to pivot based upon the execution of the plan. And so it came down to aligning, applying that work to it, the right plan, and then adapting to the feedback that was ongoing.
Yeah, I remember my first QSIT audit, and your description is at least accurate for me. I mean, I can remember being extremely nervous, not knowing what was going to be asked, not understanding exactly where things could go with an auditor. Now, fast forward several audits later, now whenever they happen, it's less of an anxious moment because look, everything that's been done up to this point, it only matters, to the point that they start pulling on that thread. And the minute
Yeah.
that they start pulling on the right thread, then how can you talk about the things that have happened and support, whatever is going on in the organization, to your point of adapting, to try and just, say, look, this has been a lot of thought has come to this particular moment. Now, whether that results in an answer that's sufficient or not, is kind of dependent on the organization and how much, the evidence, sort of shows that you did the thing that you were supposed to do. But at the same time, there's a level of this where I just sort of look at, like, if you look at a normal QSIT audit and how they're going to go through, and you sort of start and prepare, and hopefully even before that point in time you've prepared the organization for what's to come. But it is an important sort of framework, I feel like, as well, to just know that no matter what you've done up to the point when the FDA arrives, you are going to have to apply what and adapt, at some level as well.
Yes, you're 100% right. In fact, I just came from a week-long FDA inspection. It was a PLI or PAI type of concept in a firm, and it was exactly that. It was understanding the application of the skill set. The right person had to speak to the right topic. It had to be very much aligned on what is the message that is going to be delivered. What does it look like? And adapting to those questions in the room when you're there, and like you say, string is being pulled. It's difficult to say, oh, I'll tell you what, I'm going to go back. I'll come back to you in a couple of hours. So it's you have to be able to think of those things ahead of time, and a lot of that is the help to this. You ask about how this is accepted in the industry, and it is really looking at this as applying the knowledge and the people to the right area and understanding what are those questions that could be brought up, what are those strings that could be pulled, and when those strings are pulled, what's your response, what's the answer, and it's really giving people that mental frame of mind to see it and say, ultimately, either we're in a state of control or we're not. And there's various levels of that, but it really comes down to, can you sufficiently explain that you have maintained an adequate level of control and adapt always. There are always improvements that can be made, the continual improvement concept. And that's the adapting process. So if you think of the adapting process, and this is not a linear a line, apply and adapt, this is circular. So as you adapt, it goes back to make sure the alignment aspect of it's brought through, then it comes back down. It really is just to continue that process. So what I'm speaking about here really is an aspect of that. There's that continuous improvement uh, philosophy that's out there.
Yeah, so important. So let's sort of talk about the application that your organization, focuses in on, because I sort of look at this idea of working in pharmaceuticals, gene therapy, medical devices that, there's a level of at least the world of compliance that I would imagine, needs a little bit of understanding in terms of any sort of challenges or diversity that comes between those different areas as well.
Yeah, let me say there are similarities and there are differences, and you think about medical device versus a gene therapy. I mean, there's a world of difference. But really, if you boil it down and you start looking at it, it all gets down to some similar concepts. And I always tell people when I go in is like, look, no matter which division is you go into the FDA, the CEDAR, CEDAR H, CBER, they all have one thing that they look for. And that one thing is control. Are you in a state of control? How do you know you're in a state of control? How do you document you're in a state of control? And how do you improve upon that level of state of control? And so it it is taking those types of levels of concept and then getting down into the weeds, into the trenches, as I would say, and understanding for your specific operation, for your specific product, if it's device or drug or biologic, if it's commercialized, getting ready to be commercialized, or actually in some phase of clinical operation, there are levels of control you have to put in place. So it's basically putting in place the philosophy, the concepts of that. Really, it gets down to it. I tell you, the thing that I've seen that cause people great disfavor and it results in problems is their thinking process. And I've often told people going into companies, all these different types of companies, to tell them you don't have a GMP problem, you have a thinking problem. You think there's a different way of doing it, you think that there's some other process, you think that you won't be caught, you all these thinking things that come about, and really it's getting into that mindset of the leadership saying, look, this starts with you own this, and you set the tone, you set the message, and you set the philosophy or the culture. And so part of that is establishing the proper way of thinking.
Yeah. Well, I think what I sort of think about as well is that I certainly have been with organizations also that have had 483s, and they think, hey, look, I'm going to try my best to work my way around this 483. And I think I can, essentially circumvent the process and fool people into the idea that, hey, look, I'm doing all the right stuff when I'm really not. And the reality is, I mean, most of these folks that are really taking a look, and they're saying, hey, look, you really should address this. And then if it comes to a warning letter, heaven forbid, then it certainly can be something that's a greater challenge for the organization overall. Um, from your observation, and as you have sort of lived through both 483s and warning letters, what is it that really makes the remediation process successful?
Oh boy, I tell you, that is the key question. You hit the nail on the head with that. To make it successful is truly understand the context of the observation, and it starts from the inspection itself. And the inspector is there. They see something. They may talk to you about it at the time. They may talk to you about it at the end of the day, and certainly they would speak to you about it during the closeout in the 483. Your best way of solving the problem at that point is getting into the context of why is that an issue, and understanding that. Once you do that, then you have to take that context and then apply it systemically. You speak about QSIT audits. It's a system. So, so many times I've equated it to this, and I use this example all the time. That say I come in, I see you have a procedure that says you would not have this pink sheet of paper sitting on the table. I come in and I see this pink sheet of paper sitting on the table, and your response is, "Oh, well, you picked up the pink sheet of paper and we removed it." But that's deficient. The point to it is why was that event happening? Where was the breakdown in training? Where was the breakdown in oversight? What impact did it have? And then where else do I have these same situations around in the organization? And so what you find are people that are so myopically focused on things that they miss the bigger picture.
Hmm.
I can tell you a real life uh, example of that is an FDA inspection, going into a facility and finding that procedure was deficient. And so they actually said, you're going to get a citation for this SOP. And they come in the next morning, the company is all excited and happy to say, hey, we've remediated this observation. And it was, okay, so tell me, how did you do that? And it was, well, we've rewritten the SOP. We've retrained everybody on it. Here's our training sheet. And so we're good. And it was, no, you actually made it worse. And it took a step back from that, saying, stop, before you do anything else, stop. Because you're not getting the point of this. The point isn't just coming in and making window dressing, making something look nice. The point is taking this back and understanding it. What caused this problem? Why didn't you see it to begin with? Where else is this problem in all your other procedures? And then to top it off, you ran through and trained everyone overnight, rewrote this thing, and it was to the point of I'd like to see your change control, and I'd like to see how that was really truly evaluated. And I'm really now questioning the effectiveness of your training program, because I'm sure that you were not effective in training everyone over the evening on this critical change or complete rewrite of this procedure. And that is the point, is taking a step back and looking at this from like this A3 model. What is the alignment? What is the clarity of the observation? understanding that, and then applying the remediation to it, and then adapting based on what you may find coming out of that.
So back to your example earlier with regards to process improvement, right? So I'm going to go back to a lot of my background here. So one of the things that we routinely would focus on in process improvement is how can I make the process impossible for you to break? How can I make it in such a way that you would really have to try real hard to go around it? And I mean, the example going back to GE's MRIs would be, look, we took the installation manual and said, what cables and what stuff do you need first, then second, then third, then fourth, and fifth. And essentially, we built cubbies so that you pulled the stuff out of one cubby and you went and installed it, pulled the stuff out of the second cubby and went and installed it. And essentially, that way, unless you, for some mysterious reason, started at the bottom right hand corner, which would be the last thing that you would install, um, it was impossible for you to install improperly. And then to fast forward to one of my other roles still in corporate America, I had one particular quality compliance leader tell me that training was the number one way that we were going to solve a particular problem. And in this case, it essentially had a piece that had to set flat and had four screws on the bottom. But what kept happening was one of the screws would slowly back out, and all of a sudden we would have an anomaly happen inside of the machine. And so, train your service people so that they know to go tighten those screws every single visit, Don. That's what you have to do. And I'm like, but time out a second. Training should be our last option. What is the first option that we have that sort of prevents us from ever happening again? We could weld it in place. We could block tight the screws and then test that. We could provide a torque wrench and tell them how tight the thing needs to be. There's a lot of different options that we have before we get to let's go train everybody and rewrite our procedure on training again, which has already failed 3 times and proven the fact that it has. Well, it resulted, I remember, very strong reactions, essentially from our leader at that point in time. And I just remember, thinking that within the quality and compliance world, like everybody should have to live in this continuum of continuous improvement first, because you learn human behavior. And the first thing that we as humans try and do is the thing that's easiest and the easiest path for us to conduct. So
Yeah.
if your training tells me to do something that's not in my natural path, all of a sudden I'm not going to do it. And I find it really interesting, to hear your story, because I come right back to that. Hey, look, I rewrote a procedure. I retrained everybody, and we're going to force everybody to go do the new thing. And to me, it brought me right back to that same story.
Yeah, I laugh at that because that happens so many times. I can tell you a very similar story to a firm that was in some serious FDA situation, and they I was there watching this. They did an all day training with everybody, and I thought, ah, this I could see the train coming at this train wreck just happening. And the next day, right out of the gate, everything fell apart. And the CEO called me in his office, and he was there, and he said, Troy, I'm absolutely beside myself. We trained everybody. We sat there, told them this, and they come right out and don't do it. And I said, well, think of it like this. If if I became the leader of the United States tomorrow, and I said, you know what, I like the way they drive in England, and I want to switch everybody's roads over in this. I'm gonna actually have training classes. I'm gonna have people take tests. You take the test, you pass, you get your license. Now you can go out and drive. And the next day, I said, I'm going to implement this. Do you think there would be smooth or be chaos? And he said, chaos. That would be horrifying. And I said, exactly. look what you just did. It's not that simple. And so it's people truly, they look at the training, they look at simple things as being this is the panacea. Yeah, we will train people into this. We'll put another 100% inspection on the line. How many places have I gone in? I think the most 100% inspections I saw on a line were five 100% inspections. And I said, okay, I like to see the deviations that resulted in each of those being placed into effect. And it was, oh, well, two 100% inspections didn't work, so we're going to add a third one. And that didn't work, oh, we're going to have a fourth. And I said, come on, this, this doesn't work. To your point of stepping back and clarifying, what is the problem? That truly is, to my point of people having a thinking issue rather than a GMP issue, is they don't understand the problem. They don't they don't put it into context. They don't boil it down to what is it. Yeah, it was a great example of the screw coming off and coming out. So it's like, well, why is that? Is there torque on this thing? Is there vibrations causing it to go? Is that something we should be considered an issue for other things? Why just this screw? Why? What about all the others? And so it's really stepping back and taking an engineer's perspective of it. Is what is it that really is the problem,
Yeah.
and then looking at fixing that.
Yeah, your example, by the way, of switching driving this on the sides of the road, I just looked it up while you were providing a little bit of your description. So Sweden, September 3rd of 1967, which is known as H Day inside of Sweden, they decided to switch from the English side of the road to the US side of the road, in terms of driving. So they switched sides of the road, and essentially they had all sorts of issues. So they
Yeah,
spent 4 years planning, not just immediately overnight, per some sort of term change, but instead they spent a lot of time planning, and even when it happened, it caused a lot of chaos inside the country. So yeah, not
yeah,
not an easy thing to get us humans naturally to switch our behavior, but it's also something to keep in mind. I feel like whenever you're going through these things, most people don't set out in the beginning of the day to go and break some sort of process or something that should be happening a different way. They instead are doing it because they naturally think that way. So now you have to step back, like you said, and think a little bigger in terms of human
yeah.
change. How do I affect human change?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And I tell you that we've encountered that in compliance for a number of years, and that was another part of an equation that really looking at, and we developed this thing called TEACM, TEACM, and and really up front we started out with T, just only T being trained, and we realized training was not what you were looking for. I could train the dog to go fetch the stick. He doesn't understand why. So it was educate. Is it
Mm,
train, educate, and then audit, understand where you are, and then coach and mentor. So you could always improve that. That was really a human aspect of the A3 model, and it was to really align what is it that we should do to train and educate, to apply. That's the audit aspect of it, and then that was a piece of the puzzle too, adapting that, and coaching and mentoring was keeping that process going through, sharpening the saw.
very important. So Troy, what inspires you?
Oh, I tell you, it inspires me is the ability to help companies help patients. So many times we've gone out and people have been in such dire situations that they have a good product, a good model of what's going on, a good test, whatever it is, and they are just lost and they can't get it to the people who need it desperately. And really, If you can't tell, I get very energetic with this. People have told me, Troy, I don't know how you keep going all day, but you are just like the Energizer Bunny. You just keep going. And it truly is. You sit there and look at it, it's like there's a person out there that needs this, that needs something, that needs the analysis, that needs the test, that needs the device, that needs the cell therapy,
Mm,
whatever it is, and they aren't getting it because we're not able to deliver it to them. That motivates me to just get that delivered. And and part of it, I tell you, my philosophy, if you ask my business partner, she's always telling me, it's like, yeah, I know, Trey, you are the essence of a servant leader. And I always say, I work for you, and in the company, the people we have, I sit there and tell them, it's like, never forget the fact that I work for you. Just tell me what you need to be successful. If you're successful, I'm successful, and the patient's successful. And so it really does get down to that, and really having that as a core value.
ultimately so important. What concerns you?
Well, I tell you, it concerns me. People lost in the complexity of compliance, and not being able to step back from it and seeing the picture, understanding that compliance can be a value proposition, and working to basically, as you said, get around it. How can we make it look nice, but not really do it? How can we do this as cheaply as possible and say it's really great? Um, those are the things that really concern me when I see people that are so dead set in their mind that no, there's this is what it is, this is the world, and they refuse to change or even step back and say, let's self-reflect on this. That's troubling, and that is very concerning.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, thank goodness in our industry and the way that we focus and the way that that people, sort of examine these things from the FDA. Um, I really appreciate the fact that there's a body out there that is looking a little bit deeper as well. Last question: what excites you?
Oh, excites me to get up in the morning, and it's the new adventure for the day. Um, it really is going out and serving people. I really take that as a drive. Um, I I go out, I talk to people that are clients or past clients, people that just know me, and it's helping them. When I see someone coming back to me saying, Troy, your advice for this really worked out well. We were successful in doing this. That is makes the day. And like last week, during the FDA inspection, helping them, guiding them, coaching them, mentoring them, and at the end of it, seeing it be successful. And I was, yeah, that's the excitement, to say you really help people grow, mature, learn, evolve, and be successful ultimately.
Yeah, my sort of parting thought here, and then sort of open it up for any other parting thoughts that you might have before we close out here is for anybody that's going through an FDA audit, a prep for an FDA audit, building your organization and thinking about this. My own personal view is you need somebody who can help guide you because as much as we might want to do a lot of things internally and you think that you can work your way around this and save money. The reality is the cost on the back end is going to be so much more. And having somebody that can think clearly and help you think clearly about how to sort of walk the walk and talk the talk is important. And it's not that's certainly not me. I would never tout myself as a quality and compliance expert, but I certainly have been through my fair share of this and seen really good people that can help people. And so um,
Yeah.
that's where I think this space is important. I think, you know, people in your space are really critical for people in industry that are doing these things, so that they can, you know, at the end of the day, be successful. And so, yeah,
Yeah.
happy to open up the floor for any sort of parting thoughts.
I think you said it the best is getting an outside view of it. Think of this: if you were home and you had something seriously wrong with you, would you self-diagnose? A lot of people do certain things. They look on the internet now. Oh, I know how to do it. I'm going to take this. But really, to do it effectively and properly, you should get someone else to look at it and getting that second opinion, looking at it, getting a fresh set of eyes on it. A lot of times, people have told us that we are ready. We just want to have someone come in and pressure test the system, and we come in and do a mock FDA inspection, and we walk through and sometimes yeah, everything looks pretty good. Other times there's some issues, and a few times there definitely been, look, you got a serious problem. And they always look so downtrodden, and I say, look, this is a success on your part.
Found it
It
here, not
rather
there.
us than them.
Right.
Yes, that's exactly it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, ultimately so important. Well, Troy, thank you so much for coming on the Life Science Success Podcast. I appreciate you coming and telling us about what you do, but also about compliance insight and the focus of the company as well. So thanks a lot for being here.
Well, thank you very much. My pleasure.